to Race Talk Revolution, where your voice matters. And most of you know me. I am your host and founder of Race Talk Revolution Incorporated, Reverend Lane Cobb. And while I'm doing this introduction, I'm going to ask AJ to just keep your eye on the waiting room and just keep admitting folks, if you would.
Absolutely.
AJ is actually my co-host for today. He is co-owner and editor-in-chief of Black Westchester Magazine and co-host of People Before Politics Radio. Our topic today is Trauma Has No Color, Writing for Healing and Social Change. Our speaker is Ms. Robin Graham. Robin is publisher and editor-in-chief of Spotlight on Recovery magazine, offering people a pathway to healing through the written word. Today is the first session of another 8-week series of inclusive, courageous conversations about race in America. And it's also the first time that I have the pleasure of co-hosting this broadcast with Mr. AJ Woodson. So welcome, AJ, and please introduce yourself to everybody.
Hello, hello, hello. I am AJ Woodson, as she said, editor-in-chief and co-owner of Black Westchester Magazine, an online African-American news magazine. I am also an author. I have a new book out, Black Westchester, The Origin Story, and How My Faith Was Instrumental in This Great Experiment. We also have a weekly talk radio show, People Before Politics, and we are somewhat the voice of the people, the voice of the voiceless in Westchester and the surrounding area.
So AJ, I'm going to ask you to speak a little louder or turn your mic up. It's a little bit hard to hear you, and I want to make sure that everybody can hear your forceful voice because you are indeed a voice for the people.
Okay, okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me better
now? Now.
Okay. You want me to repeat what I said?
Nope, you're good.
Oh, okay.
So during our conversation today, as always, we're going to ask everyone please to remain muted. And when you get to the Q&A section, we'll tell you how to raise your hand. And during that time, we're going to invite you to activate your camera and express those questions and comments to our speaker. Until then, we ask that you please give them your full attention and limit your use of the chat as much as possible. And I know sometimes that's hard to do. We also remind you that Race Talk Revolution is an inclusive platform designed to strip away the false beliefs that keep us separated as human beings and uncover the not so hidden truth that we all want and need the same things in life, and healing the wounds created by systemic racism is our goal. So Race Talk Revolution is a safe and brave space for people of all backgrounds to share ideas and opinions and explore the nuances of systemic racism while together growing our capacity for anti-racist activism. The Race Talk community is committed to practicing radically inclusive love. So even if we don't understand or agree with what's being shared, we listen with respect, appreciation, and empathy, because our commitment is that every voice be heard, everyone is appreciated. And on Race Talk Revolution, every voice matters. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. Robin Graham is founder and editor-in-chief of Spotlight on Recovery magazine. It is a bi-monthly publication that gives a voice to the therapeutic community, especially adults who are still carrying the scars of childhood trauma. Many of the voices featured belong to incarcerated men and women who, through sharing their stories, are experiencing emotional and spiritual freedom for the first time and becoming conduits for healing and social change. Robin is the parent of 4 sons with special needs, ranging in age from 27 to 41. And in 2021, she retired from the New York City Department of Education, where she held the position of parent coordinator and liaison, helping parents access services and resources that were available to them through the Department of Education and community organizations. In 2001, Robin established Spotlight on Recovery magazine with the mission of providing a platform for healing the human spirit. She is now running her publishing company full-time. Robin's decision to use recovery as a theme for her publication is both personal and global. Fighting through her own issues in search of support, Robin realized that although countless organizations and resources are available to the masses, many people are not willing to access those resources. Robin's personal journey through domestic violence, depression, harassment on the job, and witnessing to how the crack epidemic destroyed her family and robbed an otherwise loving family of its structure speaks to the many battles one person might endure before seeking support. Robin says there are so many issues blocking your senses that even if you can't find the door sometimes, Spotlight on Recovery has no door. You just walk in. Come as you are, bring your baggage, and stay for a while. I love that. That's a beautiful thing, Robin. Welcome to Race Talk. It's so good to have you.
Thank you so much, Lane and Ms. AJ, for having me today. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
So, Robin, you openly share your struggle with mental health, and really thank you so much for your vulnerability. You've been putting out this magazine for 20 years now, from what you've told me. You've had very little help financially or logistically. I'm wondering what this has meant to you to do this, and what has it meant to the folks that read and write for your magazine?
This has meant the world to me, to finally find what my purpose is in this world. I didn't know what my purpose was for many, many years. And I was getting, nudges from the spirits, from God, or from a higher power over the years, but it just didn't click to me that this is what I should be doing. It just came as a surprise that my pain and my suffering, my struggles mirrored those who were dealing with drug abuse and alcoholism. The only difference was they chose those vices to deal with their pain and struggling, where mine was just generic. I would just cry myself to pieces going through my struggles. So when I started Spotlight on Recovery, it was just a newsletter at a drug treatment program. I sat in a circle and I heard these men and women share the trauma of a childhood that led them into drugs because they're trying to numb this pain. And like I said, the only difference was I didn't choose drugs, I chose to cry. And I said, wow, I've been looking for a place like this since I was in my 20s, a place where I could freely and openly say, I'm in pain, I'm hurting. This is what happened to me. And in the Black community, you're taught whatever happens to you, you keep it to yourself. Don't tell anybody. You look vulnerable. You know, they'll judge you. And I find that you can be non-judgmental when it comes to pain and when it comes to trauma, if you just be a little vulnerable yourself.
Wow, that's huge. You know, one of the things that many of us who pay attention to anti-racist activism and all of the things that sometimes occur as propaganda and people sometimes talk about is the exposure all the time to Black trauma, right? The trauma of the ancestors of slaves and so forth and so on. And people sometimes call it trauma porn, you know, where we're having all of our traumas kind of put on display. You say trauma has no color. What do you mean by that?
Okay, what I mean is that everybody experiences some type of trauma in their life. However, everyone is not treated equally for the trauma they endure. I once called the police because my son hadn't come home by his curfew. So 4 cops, white cops, came to my apartment. They asked me a few questions, ordered me to turn off my TV, which I only had it on because I needed a distraction. I'm worried about my child. And I was treated as if I caused my son's decision to not return home. It was very uncomfortable. So there was no empathy for anything that I might have been feeling with a child not home by 9 o'clock, 9:30. And, you know, so that trauma is still with me because I know that to this day, I can't call the police officer to do a wellness check on my son because I fear he may become a victim. This is a trauma felt in the Black community. I'm not sure how much it's felt in the white community about when to call a cop when your child is experiencing a mental health issue. And like I said, I have 4 children that had various degrees of mental health issues. So I will not be calling a cop. I will try to work through it with them.
That's that's something we all face. We had that here in Westchester with Kenneth Chamberlain. He set off his life alert. They went to a wellness check, and 90 minutes later he was dead. So we know that trauma has a shame and stigma. How does writing help us heal? I always say writing is therapeutic. I'm a writer. How do you feel that writing helps us heal? And what are some of the stories that stand out for you?
Trauma, I think once you get it out of your soul and get it out of those dark places, whether you're putting it in a song, whether you're writing it on paper, whether you're journaling, it takes it out of those places that it's been hiding and holding you down, you know, keeping you low. And it just frees you up to think about other things. You got that out of the way. Now, what else you have to deal with? And what I found with my writers, with the letters that I get, is that their trauma is also compounded by a history of trauma from childhood, that by the time their adulthood is here, they don't even know why they're angry. They don't even know why they feel the way they feel. And I would like to read just one of the letters that I got from a gentleman who's still serving time. His name is Joseph M. I'm not going to use his last name. And he says, in 1994, I was 7 years old and living in a house with no electricity, water, or gas. My father became an abusive alcoholic and my mother became depressed. She started abusing anxiety medications. It was like they both forgot they had children and the responsibility to raise young boys. By 1995, I was 8 years old and my life would change for the worse. Crack cocaine would be introduced to my now abandoned home and would turn into a crack house overnight. I went from watching cartoons and playing with the neighborhood kids to smoking crack cocaine right next to my mother and father, as if I was like one of their friends and not their 8-year-old child. My childhood would stop right then and there. I would find out what being addicted felt like. I would soon start an addiction of my own. By the age of 9, I was robbing houses, stealing cars, carrying guns, and selling drugs. I had to find a way to support my drug addiction and to make sure there was food in the house and kerosene for the kerosene heaters in the house. It was like I became the man of the house, or I would have to go without. I was out in the streets getting money any and every way I could. By 1998, I was 11 years old, living in West Virginia. My family and I were living in a homeless shelter with 60 other people. Living in a homeless shelter is not fun, and going to school from there was even harder. Kids were making fun of me for the way I talked because I was from the city and I didn't talk like them. They also made fun of me because I lived in a homeless shelter. I started getting into fights in school and got put in a boys' home for 2 years in Pittsburgh. My parents eventually broke up. 2 years later, my mother had a new boyfriend, a truck driver. By 2000, my mother's boyfriend helped her get me out of the boys' home. I moved in with them and started going to school. I was 13 years old and I was starting my new life, putting the street life behind me. My mother had a good nursing job. Her boyfriend drove his truck all week long and would come home on the weekends. I finished the school year and met a lot of kids. I was hanging out, finally being a kid, doing young teen things. I started going on the road with my mother's boyfriend so I could see different states and see the world. I would also help unload the truck and make money. Then things got strange. I was ready to go to bed in the back of the truck when my mother's boyfriend tried paying me so he could sexually assault me. He would force himself on me and make me watch sex videos with him. I never went to the cops because I didn't want to hurt my mother. So could you imagine that a child carrying all that trauma and finally coming to, I guess, my magazine to share that story and not being able to share that all these years. And let me just say that I don't know if my writers are white, Black, Hispanic, until they send me their picture to be put in a magazine. So I could be in correspondence with them for years and never know what they look like. They know what I look like because my picture's in there, but I may never know what they look like. So trauma has no color. Joseph M. Okay, sorry. Joseph M. is a white man, and he's still doing prison time. I didn't ask him what he did because that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to help them find who they are underneath all that trauma that's been on them for many years. And you can't help them if you're going to judge them.
Right. So let me ask you a question. You provided a platform for those that are incarcerated to be able to write for your magazine. What made you, that's kind of way out of the box of traditional publications and all that. What made you provide this platform? What brought that about?
Well, when I worked at the drug rehab program, they were in that program because they chose to get help for their addiction as opposed to going to jail. So they were one step out of jail into a program. So listening to their stories, like, wow, what if they had somebody to listen to them like they were listening to them in that group? What if they were able to tell those horror tales and free their souls of that pain? And what if became a newsletter at the drug treatment program? That's how it started. And I remember the boss saying to me, you think these people are gonna write for you? Do you really think these people are gonna even care? I said, listen, I just wanna let them know it's here if they want to. After he saw the first and second one, he never asked me that question again.
Wow.
You never know what people are looking for unless you present them with something.
Absolutely.
You just can't assume that they don't want to share, or they don't want to tell, or they don't want to be free from that pain.
Now you mentioned that, mental health has no color, but I know you also believe that Black mental health is everyone's issue. Can I get you to expound on that a little bit? Yes.
I say it's everyone's issue because we're in this together. Everybody is a victim of somebody else's trauma. People with mental health issues are in pain. And when they are about to explode, they don't care who's in front of them or who's in the way or who's going to be hurt. They're just letting it all out. So I say that to say, we have a lot of African-American young males out here with the guns, shooting, killing innocent people, innocent bystanders. And it is the Black community that's struggling more so than the other nationalities. So the Black community needs to be given more resources. They need to be heard. You have to meet them where they are. You have to say, come as you are and tell me what it is you need. You have to find a way to reach them on every level, every project, every shelter, in every school. That's the only way that you're going to find out how to stop the pain. You have to meet them where they are.
Absolutely, absolutely. In the city I live in, Mount Vernon, we have a lot of senseless gun violence, and we've been dealing with that a lot as community leaders. And one of the things I've spoke on to a lot of the adults is there is no place for these children to unpack the trauma that they face every day. They said it's like a soldier coming home from war, they got PTSD, but I disagree a little bit with that. they're not coming home. They're living in the war zone. They go to
Exactly.
school in the war zone, and they go from one traumatic situation to another traumatic situation. There was a drive-by shooting, and then weeks later, one cheerleader stabbed another cheerleader. Like, the kids are dealing with this, and they're never unpacking this. And what I like about your publication, it gives a platform for people to unpack their pain. And I know writing is very therapeutic for me. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Yes. Some of the stories that I get from my writers have to give me pause, because some of them I just can't believe that the trauma went unchecked. If you have a child, then you know the parents are drug addicts. How do you leave the child there? You know, if you know the child's being bullied, how do you leave them in that situation? I had a situation with the Board of Ed with one of my children with special needs, and he was fighting every day, and the school would call me every day. And my job at the time in Midtown said, oh, you know, your school's calling you every day, you're depressed, you're stressed, you can't do this job. So we're gonna hire our other lady back and we're gonna let you go. And that was the best they could do for me. So now here I was stressed, depressed, and jobless. Trauma on top of my already existing trauma as a single parent, dealing with a child with disabilities. And then behind that, I couldn't go, okay, you're out of a job, Robin. Do you want to go and get some help for yourself now? I couldn't possibly go right now. I have to go check on my son and get his life situated. So I didn't have time to go and check my trauma. So my trauma went unchecked because I had to check my son's trauma. So I had to take on the Board of Ed and prove that they weren't doing everything they could to help my child with special needs.
Wow.
And I found a school, and the city paid for him to go to that school until he graduated with his Regis diploma. So I saved his life, but I didn't take care of my life at that time, but I saved my son's life.
That's powerful. Lane, I have been monopolizing the conversation and depriving the audience of hearing your lovely voice. Would you like to, do you have a question or two, or you want me to keep going?
So I'm enjoying the conversation. It's all good. You know, one of the things that thank you, lovely voice. Ha ha. One of the things that Robin really, you know, pointed to really is the intergenerational trauma. And you too, AJ, you know, we tend to, in America, blame people for the situations that they're in. You know, we blame the children for their bad behavior. You know, what's wrong with those Black people, you know, that they can't, you know, get themselves under control. And of course, you know, we see that people who are Second Amendment rights persons are often, you know, to kind of deflect the attention, say, yeah, well, why are there so many Black people who are talking about we need national gun control when all the shootout, you know, the blackout on Black, you know, homicide rate is so huge. And so people, you know, kind of don't want to look at this intergenerational and generational and, you know, all these different types of trauma that, that, as you said, Robin, pile on top, right? And that people can't get underneath, that is compounded by the Black community's lack of trust for the medical field, right? Government programs who often, like, people don't want to go and get, like, there's a lot of moms who don't want to say, I'm having problems controlling my child or my own mental health because they don't want their children to be taken out of the home, right? And put into the foster system. So there is a lot going on. And these things also, I mean, a lot of poor whites find themselves in these situations as well, even though they don't have quite the same relationship to the conversation about mental illness being a weakness. So you say that Black mental health is everybody's business, and you want people to kind of lean in. What is it that you, and I know that there are organizations that are largely happening in smaller places and not on the national news, but like AJ says, so like organizations like SNUG, in
Yeah.
Westchester that help to curtail gang violence and so forth. What do you feel like nationally might be a good thing to happen that would be helpful here in curtailing people's mental illness or elevating mental health awareness?
Well, they have to really seriously consider meeting people where they are and asking the hard questions.
And what are some of those hard
And
questions?
some of those hard questions are you okay? And then you lean in a little bit more. Do you need anything for your child? Is there something else we can help you with that you feel you can't share with somebody else? Do you have enough money? Or, just someone noticing something like, oh, I noticed you have a car, but you haven't been driving it, and you've been walking your children the 10 blocks to school. Is there something I can help you with? You have to really show them that you want to help, because the agencies will have you come and fill out paperwork. Oh, we'll get back to you in 2 weeks, and you need it now. Here I am, a domestic violence survivor, 35 years later. They still giving women a piece of paper when their abuser can come with a gun or a knife.
Oh, for like protection orders.
Yes, or order protection. It's still a piece of paper, nothing else.
Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, so how can people do this, right? So I think that there might be some civic organizations that are trying to do this, churches. I know that, in the same way that they do aid with food and clothing and so forth, they can also have referrals for mental health services. What do you recommend?
Okay, they do have all those things, but it's just going to take a little more personal, hands-on. So I would suggest starting with maybe a survey that outlines everything. Say, we have people that can help you with everything on this list. Check it off what you need and send it back and see what response you get. If you don't want to do it worldwide right away, pick a housing development and just do that housing development, a couple of buildings at a time. Get with the president of the housing authority for the tenants association. Do one at a time, because you're going to be surprised with how.
You're very much advocating
surprised
for person-to-person communication, very much
yes,
so, right?
Because you have no idea what they're dealing with.
Mm.
You couldn't even imagine. The trauma is so unbearable. They don't know which way to go. They don't know which door to open. They don't know who to go to.
So I'm going to ask you a question. You said something in an earlier discussion with me. You said people don't know what love is anymore.
Mm.
That's a deep, deep statement. What did you mean when you said that?
I meant that I feel love is lost right now. Not only the lack of love for human life, but the lack of love in one's own life. The most profound issue is the amount of people who don't know what love is, how to show it, how to receive it. And there are a lot of people who don't know love themselves or know how to love themselves. There are a lot of signs that people are missing love in their lives at some level. If you knew in your heart that there's one person that loved you through all your faults, missteps, and embarrassments, would you go out and hurt someone else? If you thought that someone cared enough to ask you what is going on and not dismiss you when you're trying to communicate to them the only way you know how, do you think that you would lie to them? If you thought that a missing parent in your household didn't leave because he or she didn't want you anymore, would you disrespect the other parent who stayed to raise you? If you don't know what love looks like, how could you even love anyone or anybody that's out here? To you, everybody is, not worth it because you feel like you're not worth it. What's it all for? They don't even know what life means. They don't know what love is. We don't even show it on a daily basis in some, I'll say in some communities, in some households.
Mm.
We have no idea where these kids, what the kids are going home to, or what women are going home to, what men are going home to, what's going on the jobs. It's so much pain and suffering everywhere. No one is happy at this time. I can't even think that anybody's happy. You have to find your own happiness in any little pocket you can find it. But for the most part, love is missing in a lot of people's hearts and in a lot of people's minds.
Well, and anger, you know, has actually taken over in many ways. The access, you know, that people have to express, or the encouragement that people are receiving to express their anger, more than encouragement to express their love, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
Which takes our souls in a whole different direction. So I just want to ask, there's a couple of things I really want to, you know, you and AJ could have a conversation about how writing is therapeutic. One of the things that you did say, Robin, was your experience with opening this avenue of healing through writing to people who are incarcerated, that they are rediscovering the capacity for self-love.
Yes.
Could you just talk about that for a little bit? And then I have a follow-up question, and then maybe we can go to Q&A.
Yes. I would like to read another article that one of my writers wrote about that, about what it meant to him to have this platform. His name is Troy G. He's in a prison in Texas. And he wrote that the first magazine, he said, Spotlight on Recovery is the first magazine to encourage my creativity while supporting my self-examination. It prompted me to look deeper into myself and wrestle with those uncomfortable emotions, concepts, and ideas. Knowing I am not judged or criticized for my past action motivates me to hug my anger, dance with my anxieties, and shake hands with my fears. Having a healthy and safe place to share parts of myself allows me to confidently move and shake off shackles of feeling timid, allowing me to find beauty beneath my ugliness. He says, the noon sky was dark and stormy the day I saw my poetry and my personal life stories published in Spotlight on Recovery. I sat alone in my cell and allowed tears to slide down my face with the falling rain. For almost 50 years, I caused nothing but heartache and sadness. Yet, in that moment of seeing my words published, I knew I can make a difference in someone else's life. My life is not worthless. So that's just one of many articles I received in testimony for my 20th anniversary issue. And I think his speaks volumes. 50 years of doing all these things and not knowing who he really was until somebody said, let's start writing about this. And now my topics are not something you would, find a therapist asks you to do. My topics are like, okay, the best advice, or setting boundaries, or the day I grew up. And you'd be surprised what feedback you get from these different people with different backgrounds. So you're not really saying, oh, were you abused? You're saying, when did you grow up? When did your concept of being a man or woman hit you?
I wanted to chime in real quick. My partner, Damon K. Jones, he works for Valhalla, the local county jail in Westchester County. And I have been out and about where I have seen several people walk up to him and say that they never had a father figure, and he was their first father figure as a correction officer. I mean, in the free, they had no father figure, but you know what I'm saying? And he treated them like a man in jail. And I know that in addition to your interest in mental health awareness, you also advocate for prison reform. And I like to add prevention too, because we sometimes we are careful. We are quick to grab people when they fall in the water and they're running down the stream. But we don't go to the beginning of the stream and put something up to stop them from falling in the first place. So,
Exactly.
I just like to give you a chance to speak on that.
Yes, exactly. There are so many other brothers and sisters who are incarcerated that have mental health issues right now, and they shouldn't be in the prison. They should be in a mental health hospital getting the services they need. They are no different than you and I. It's just that they did something wrong and they're paying for it. So for them to be treated differently because they're behind bars is just wrong. They're still citizens of the United States of America. They didn't lose their citizenship, so they should be treated accordingly. When one of my writers wrote to me and said, "Hey, I tried to get counseling because I really need to get something off my chest," and he said all the doctor said was, "Okay, what medication would you like?" So they just want to dope him up, and he refused. And so he just wrote me, and I tried to work with him. I'm not a therapist, but I tried to, encourage him and tell him to find someone that he knows and speak with that person. But to offer drugs in place of listening to somebody, tell you what's hurting and what's bothering them is not acceptable for anyone. And when they tell me, Ms. Graham, can you send me a free copy of the magazine? I only make $1.31 a day for 12 hours of work. I'm like, okay, that's slavery in my eyes. And some prisons, they don't get paid anything for their work. But $1.31 a day with 12 hours work, what can you possibly buy with $1.31 a day? We know that at least $70,000 and up a year is being paid to care for these prisoners. That's, food, clothing, medical attention, whatever. But if you're also not giving them the resources to make sure they don't come back to prison, then you're doing an injustice. So let's just start with those that are having mental health issues. Let's give them the right services that they need and move them out of the prison into the mental health hospitals so that they don't come back once they're released, because they would have gotten the right services they were supposed to get in the first place. Like us, many of my writers lost loved ones to COVID. Some of them caught COVID. Some of them lost their friends in prison to COVID. But is anybody reaching out to them? Is there a counselor going in there and giving them counseling? I doubt it. But the only thing that makes them difference is they're behind a wall and we're not. And there should be no difference at all. They're human beings. They're human beings first. They're citizens first.
Absolutely. I see a lot of people are already commenting. We're going to go to the Q&A real soon after this next question, because a lot of people are talking about the powerful work that you're doing and they're moved by what they're hearing. What is your call to action and how would you like people to get involved?
Thank you for that question. I have some, I wrote down about that because I wanted to get it right. Okay. Each person can get involved by speaking to a neighbor of any nationality, any race, any sex, and tell them that you are taking part in the all hands on deck challenge, and that you are a designated listener and advocate. You want to know if there's anything they need, no matter how crazy, personable, or heart-wrenching the answer is. Find a way to help. Give them a resource you may have. Make a call to someone you know that handles the issue they speak of. If you write, send a letter on their behalf to the necessary agency. Give them your contact information. Be of support any way you can. The challenge is as for long as you want to help. I'm not going to tie your hands and say you got to stay there forever. For as long as you want to help, for as much as you can give. And you don't have to give it in financially. You can give it in a smile. You could give it in a tickets to the movies for somebody and their children. You can give it in gas, a gas card. Just show someone you care. that you see them out of the corner of your eye, and you always see that person, and you're always wondering, that person you see out of the corner of your eye, go up to that person and say something. You can even be a little vulnerable and say, well, you know, I've been going through a rough time and this, that. And once you're vulnerable, they may open up. I had a lady come to me at a health fair not too long ago. And, you know, she was looking at my magazine and she took some of the issues with her and she leaned in and she said, you know, my daughter was murdered in 2016. And, you know, the cops were very rude to me. They were very harsh on me. What bothered me wasn't that she was sharing. What bothered me was that she had to whisper it as though it was a shame. People shouldn't have to whisper their shame. People shouldn't have to feel that they will be shunned because they're victims. Our children don't know what trauma is when they're growing up. They don't know until they become an adult and a counselor gets to them and they say, oh yeah, now I know why I feel this way. This is what happened to me when I was 6 or 7, 8 years old, but I didn't know what they called it back then. And we really can't go into the schools and start teaching children, well, your mother's traumatizing you. We can't really do that because they love their mothers and they're not going to believe that. But we have to find a way to let them know it's okay to talk about it. You can't keep something like that quiet because it festers in you and you hate the world after a while because they can't see that you're suffering. They can't see your pain because trauma is invisible and they can't see it. It has no color, it has no shape, it has no form until you actually burst out with your pain and cause others harm. Because the truth of the matter is that hurt people will hurt people.
Absolutely. Part two of that question, and I asked this from someone who has a publication that provides services for the community. You know, it's a labor of love. You know, it's not something that you do and you really get rich off of or something like that. And sometimes it's contributions from a lot of people that help you keep going. How can our audience support you?
Oh, thank you for that question. They can support me by getting a subscription to the magazine. I've kept my prices the same for the past 20 years. A 1-year subscription is $25. You get at least 6 issues, sometimes 7 in a year. If I'm feeling, you know,
Interest.
very, very full of energy. 2-year is $40. If you're an organization and you have upcoming events that deal with mental health, trauma, or just giving a safe place for people to come and chat, you can advertise with us. Half-page advertisements is $90. Full page is $175, all full color. If you buy 2 ads, your 3rd one will be free. And I do accept donations. I am trying to get my translated issue back on the market. I do translate into Spanish. And I would like to start that up again as well.
Where can they leave? Like you mentioned donations. Is there a link or something that you have? Can you put it in the chat or
I just put it in, AJ.
It's in the chat. PayPal is the best option. Just use my email, rgram_100@msn.com. If you want to send a check or money order, you can send it to rgram Publishing Company, make it out to rgram Publishing Company, and the address is in the chat.
And the website is www.spotlightonrecovery.com. That's so great. Thank you, Robin. So we're going to go ahead and open the floor for Q&A, guys. And if you want to raise your hand, you can do so by at the bottom of your screen. There's a reaction button. Go ahead and hit that and you'll see a place to raise your hand. You can also go to the participants button and find your name and raise your hand that way. And please go right ahead and let's have you ask some questions of this wonderful, loving person. Thanks so much, Robin.
Hi, Vicky.
That's quick. Robin, I want to thank you for your compassion, and I really liked the specific examples of how you initiate conversations with strangers that some people might be hesitant to talk with. Yesterday, I went to our public library and talked to the library director because several times I've been to the library and there's a group of homeless people that hang out there, and it's disarming for a lot of the patrons. So they were looking for ways that they could support those people because they have to be out of the homeless shelter by a certain time and they can't go back into the shelter until 4 o'clock. So
Right.
that was kind of an audience. And when I sat down with the director, I said, I'd really like to help with this. You know, I just finished my ministry training and I thought, okay, God, how will I be used? And I was led there, but he was telling me about a woman like you who said, these people need their stories to be heard. So once a week, she comes and listens to their stories and helps them write it up. And
Wow.
then if they want it to be published, she'll take it to a publishing step, but they don't always want to. Sometimes they just need to get it out.
Yes.
So I'm going to meet her on Friday. So I'm so honored to meet you today. Gives me a little more background. Other people are doing this, that same concept of when you're working with trauma, you've got to go to the point of the wound and
Yeah.
uncover some of those things that so much. And I'm on the school committee and I was at a school today and they try to cover it up. The kid had overdosed. They didn't want the public to know. So they don't want anything that makes them look bad. But if it's not cleaned up and exposed, the sore just grows.
Yes.
So I'm just thankful for this interaction. I guess I don't have a question because you've explained so well how you have that sense that you want to help and it just comes out naturally, it seems like.
Yes, it does. It is natural. It's I've been there. I've been through trauma. I've been through hurt, and there was no one that had an answer for what I was going through. No one who could look me in the eye and say, "Oh, I'll help you with this." They just kind of looked down and went on with their lives, and I didn't want to be that way if I knew there was a way to help. Thank you, Vicki.
Wonderful.
Okay, Cody.
Yes, Bruce, thank you so much. Your heart is so big. I can just can feel it across the country.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I love the concept of this is not something we whisper about.
No, we have to speak up.
That's so big. Yeah. I am blessed with a bunch of Black friends, and my significant other is African American, and it's been 18 years, and it's still very hard for him to verbalize, what's going on. And I'm sure there are trust issues involved, but it's been 18 years. That's a long time.
It's not
so
just
for
trust.
me,
I'm sorry. It's not just trust. Sometimes it's fear. Like, what would you think of him if he really told you some of those things?
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Thank you. Thank you for that. So for me, it's mostly just unconditional love that I can put out there. And I try to do that generally. But you've definitely said that also. So, but I thank you for that. That kind of answered a question without me having to ask it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just add one thing to Cody? As Black men, we're taught to not show when things are bothering us. We're supposed to be the providers. We're supposed to be the strength of our family. We're not taught to show weakness to our loved ones. We have to be strong for our loved ones. So it might not be that he doesn't trust you. It might not be that he knows how to release that, because we're not taught that in our community. And I can speak personally and as Black men. I think the next person that had his hand up was our brother David Burks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Hi,
I also
David.
would echo that. How you doing, Robin? Thank you
I'm
so much.
fine.
And I would echo what you're saying, AJ, about the expectations for Black men in our society and as we're kind of taught. Ms. Robin, I have a question about, I want to go back to the writing in the writing process. How was that? Can you describe the editing process and the writing process of when, someone says, hey, this is, I want to answer this question. Do you help them in that process? Or you kind of just take it as it is and just, I guess how heavy-handed are you in the editing process?
Okay, I'm not very heavy-handed unless it's really bad work. And I will send it back to them and I will give them a long drawn-out explanation, like the language you can't use, watch your punctuations, or you can do much better than this, and work on it, try it this way. I got lucky because so many of my writers are excellent writers. And I have to type every one of them mostly, because not every person that's incarcerated has a tablet or a kiosk that they can email me. So I'm looking at handwriting and typing it up. Luckily, I type 90 words a minute. So I do very well with typing up the articles. So I accept 95% of the articles that are sent to me. And very little of them are edited. Yeah, because they're very good writers. If I have to tweak anything, it's spelling and punctuation mostly. Yeah.
Thank you for your question, David. Do we have, I don't see any more hands up. Do we have any more questions for Robin? I see Ann Watts just put her hand up. How you doing, Ann?
Hi, welcome, AJ. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and Robin, I just, wow, you touch my heart deeply. You're just amazing. And I'm so grateful for the work you're doing. And my question is, how do people find out about your magazine?
Well, I was in the writer's market. I'm usually it's a publication, a catalog of publishers and writers. And mostly the people who send in inquiries are asking about, do you take mental health articles? And I do. And so when I got letters from people who are incarcerated, once they get the magazine, they share it with someone else, and then it's word of mouth from there. So 125 writers, 50% of them are incarcerated.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have in 16 different states. And I have like 15 writers in Arkansas alone, different prisons. Yeah. And California is pretty big, and Florida. And I just hired 6 women from a Louisiana prison. And that was, which started with one woman. She wrote me, and before I knew it, oh, this person would like to write for you. This person like, so I'm actually putting out a new magazine next month. It's called As Above, So Below. And basically, we want the equality issue to be addressed. And this is strictly for incarcerated citizens and formerly incarcerated citizens to use the platform. Because I still feel that although I am in the prison facilities, I'm not reaching those who are still dealing with their demons. And my best chance of reaching them is through people who are in there with them, and let them speak to them in this magazine and share it with them. Let them be the light, and others will follow that light.
So if I have a follow-up question, thank you, Ann. How do we then promote your magazine, right? So some of us have contacts, people who work in prisons or people who work in mental health organizations. How do we promote your magazine?
You could have me come in and speak on a Zoom meeting to your body, your staff. You could invite me out. We'll actually come to your state, wherever you are, and meet with staff and your constituents. I'm open to everything. We're talking about saving lives. We're talking about giving this world a heart transplant any way we can, without, drawing blood.
That's powerful. That's
without
powerful.
putting people under
Under knife, right?
yeah. Let's do a heart transplant here, guys. All hands on deck.
I see the next person who has their hand up is Leah Nelson.
Hi,
Hi,
Leah.
thank you so much. Welcome, AJ.
Thank you.
To have you, and Robin, thank you so much. And I'm really discovering that writing is helping me. I'm involved with a personal / professional coach right now, and starting to write about some of my trauma and the lenses that I look at the world through. And it's really surprising how much it's helping me see myself and how I deal with the world. My question is about, I was recently on a Zoom call with an incarcerated man who's also a writer. It was a group Zoom call, and I read some of his writings, and one was about the abuse that he and most of his fellow inmates suffered as children.
Mm-hmm.
And my comment, because I felt like he was, in my mind, I thought he was blaming his parents a lot. And I guess I wanted to make him feel better. And I said that I felt like all this intergenerational trauma is caused by basically systemic racism, oppression, and our culture. And it goes back a long time. And I felt resistance from him, that he kind of wanted to blame his parents, and I felt like I said the wrong thing. But my intent was to make him not blame himself or his parents. You know, do you understand what I mean?
Yes.
So did I say the wrong thing? And now when I'm going through this coaching, I see myself wanting to blame my parents. You know what I mean?
I think for that he was being truthful about what he was feeling, and that feeling should have been acknowledged as face value, and not try to turn it into something else. We already know those other issues exist, but we're talking about somebody that's really coming out of his shell and saying, hey, this is what happened, and this person. And as much as we love our parents growing up and all that, they're human beings. Things happen. They have trauma, and they may not see that how it's going to affect their child in the long run, because they can't see any further than the pain they're in. But when someone does that and they're sharing with you, you have to take it at face value and not try to twist it into anything else. He's sharing, he's opening up. Listen and take it as first at face value, and acknowledge that pain. That's very important, to acknowledge what he's saying and where he's coming from.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That is so true. I just wanted to add, sometimes the people just need someone to listen to them. They don't need anybody to be a judge, or they don't need nobody to give advice. Sometimes they just need you to be that ear, so they can just get it out and unapologetically and you know, with no judgments or something. And sometimes that can be the best thing you can do for somebody. And then they may then ask you, what do you think? And they open the door for you to then share. But sometimes just the listening part, I think, is very powerful. I know even with a lot of you feel like they have nobody to talk to. They have nobody that will understand them, to share, to unpack what they're going through. So I just wanted to add that what Robin said. Were there any Thank you for your question. Were there any other, I don't see any other hands. Are there any other questions out there for Robin? I've seen a couple of people that wrote things in the chat. Any questions or comments for Robin?
Yeah, questions or comments, keep them coming, guys. I did want to, AJ, just highlight that one of our Race Talk family did put in the chat an inquiry, Robin, about whether or not he could submit something that he has written to you through your website. Are you accepting new submissions, and how can people submit their stories?
Okay, for submissions, they should submit to my email, not the website, because I'm working on updating the website. So the information would not, it would get to me, but I prefer just send it through my email, rgram_100@msn.com. I will look at any submissions that come through, but I will have new topics for next year. All my topics are fulfilled for this year, but I'm not saying I won't look at what you send me, because I may be able to use it next year or this year. So do send it. I do new topics every fall for the following year, because I have so many writers, and it would, if I were to open it up for them to do year round, I would never get anything done. I not only type every letter or article that comes through, I answer every letter that comes through to me. I answer every email, every email from JPay, Connect Network, and Core Links, where the prisoners write to me. And I personally answer everything. So it would be too much to have topics year round. So what I do is I send them 7 topics, 8 topics in October. So everybody who would like to write, they can send me their email, and I will put you on my topic list. And then you can choose up to 2 of the topics to write for, and I will give you due dates. That way you're not overwhelmed that you're trying to get everything in one date. It's very simple. And if I need more for an article, for a topic that people have not submitted, I will send out an email blast to let you know, hey, I'm still looking for articles for this particular topic.
So let me so for people that are not on your email list, so people that are listening right now and who may watch this afterwards, how do I find out what your topics are? How do I get on your email list? How, like, I just want to scroll through and just cop through and see what your topics are. How do I do that if I'm not on your email list?
Okay, when the website is up, everything will be on that, the new website. So I have somebody working on it as we speak. And hopefully I'm pushing for at least mid-July, end of July, to have it up and running. So everybody who sends me emails, I will send you when the new website is up and running.
I also want to congratulate you. I don't think everybody understands that. As someone who, I'm kind of the chief cook and bottle washer of my publication too. So I answer every email. I respond to every phone call and every text. I don't think people understand like what an undertaking that is. And not everybody does that. You know what I mean? Like, and I know probably some of the worst things is for someone to reach out and they already feel like they're not being heard. And then, you don't respond and they're like, see, nobody cares, and they give up.
Yeah, I hope they don't give up. The magazine is like my 5th child. I have 4 sons. This magazine is my 5th child. From birth in 2001, when I first started out, didn't know what I was doing, but I just knew I liked to write, and I wanted to provide a platform. And I knew that recovery was a serious issue that affected everybody. Everybody had a recovery story. So no one really understands the undertaking or the reason behind why would you do a recovery. Everybody, this AA, this NA. I said, okay, yes, there's all those things, but there's nothing like having a safe place to share your pain, to speak about the atrocities that you witnessed or survived. and have someone else read it and say, wow, somebody just told my story. And now I know that I'm not alone here. I'm not alone on this planet, let alone this neighborhood. I'm not alone on this planet. Somebody else is going through the same thing I'm going through.
And in that, you can release that story so that you can actually access better ways of coping, right? You can release some of the dysfunction. I know that you shared with me at least one story of a gentleman who was released, and upon his release, he's now become a healing conduit. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, yes. Ian Manuel book named My Time Will Come. He was incarcerated at the age of 15 in Florida and given a life sentence for a non-fatal shooting. The person did not pass away. So at 15 years old, the judge gave him life. He's an African-American. And in giving him life in prison at 15, they couldn't put him in general population, so they put him in solitary confinement.
Oh, man.
Until the age of 34. So solitary confinement for a child at 15 to the age 34. And he came out humble because someone heard his story, and the person he shot heard his story about him. I believe he lost his mom or whoever was caring for him, and he was shuffled from family to family and abused. And he was on his own on the street, doing the best he can to survive. And one of those things he did to survive was rob. And he shot the woman, and she heard his story, and she forgave him. And she was one of those people that helped him get out. So he's a successful writer. He's going around to colleges. He's, speaking engagements. And last he told me they're doing a movie about him.
And the foreword of his book is by Brian Stevenson, by the way.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So the book is called My Time Will Come. His name is Ian Manuel, Ianmanuel. Yeah, that's amazing. Success stories. We just want to hear those success stories, and then we can realize also that we can be, the wind underneath somebody's wings, so that for their success story. You never know how you can help somebody just by leaning in, giving them an opportunity to share their lived experience. How valuable is that?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to ask you a question. You're providing a safe place for other people to heal, to share their trauma on their road to recovery. You started out the conversation talking about the trauma you were going through. Has this project, this endeavor, helped you heal, helped you on your road to recovery?
Absolutely. I was journaling around the time that I had that job at the treatment program. And just for myself to say, how you doing today, Robin? What are you going to do today? What makes you happy? And I do share some of my stories in the publication, in my letter from the publisher when it comes up, and I have to say, yeah, well, this happened to me, and I know how this feels, being lied to, and that's my next issue is lies I've been taught, and that goes a long way. Everybody has been lied to at one point in their lives, but how does it affect you really? How did that lie affect you? So it has helped me immensely. And I think I'm waiting for my children to tell me how much I've changed in the 20 years before I started doing the magazine, because I was not this kind of person 20 years ago. It's a lot of work. You had to work through it. You had to be willing to see your ugly side and those things that you did you're not too proud of, but you came through it. And you have to acknowledge other people's feelings. I have, my sons are grown men now, but they still have some quirks, but I can deal with them because I know them and I understand and I've listened to them. And it's okay. It's not the worst. They're very good young men. And if they have a little quirk, I could deal with. I could deal with a little quirk at the stage in their life, because they've come so far as I have come so far.
And it's important that to acknowledge, right, that we are all going through something, right?
Right.
Whatever that is,
Absolutely.
all of us, and now especially in the world that where we live in, that is so activating, right? There's just so much stimulus. There's just so much conversation, so much going on around us, and we are buzzing with anxiety. Like we could just feel, right, that it's hard for many people to know which ground is solid to stand on. Is it safe here? Is it safe to speak? Is it safe to be, what is there to do? And so writing can be absolutely a grounding tool for that as well. But when you were talking, what came to me is, the power of forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness of ourselves and forgiveness for other people. We've had several shows here on Race Talk about restorative justice and how important that is, in the healing process and also in prison reform. You're really highlighting that looking within, going within, taking some time just to be introspective and to express and to touch truth for you can help us rise above all of that stuff that we've lived through
Yes.
that could keep us, from getting up under it. So I really
Absolutely.
appreciate that. Yeah.
I see we
Yeah.
have another question. And I wanted to just say, the reason I asked that, the people the ones that provide the platform, very few people ever ask them how they're doing. How you're the safe, you place this platform to heal everybody else. No one, I don't know how many people ask you how you're doing and how. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Next question is from Karen Hirsch.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, all of you. It's really, really wonderful. I was in a group of Buddhist American teachers who all of us really wanted to understand what's going on in terms particularly of the Black community and what, if anything, we can do. All of them except me really, how can I say this? The end of like a Buddhist gathering is, may I be well, may you be well. And then for the people that we have the most difficulty with, wishing them well. And I just can't get it. But I wrote down, we are all going through something. We all want the same thing, to heal our wounds, forgiveness, etc. And I want to know from all of you how you feel this applies to, for example, President Trump, white supremacists who have, the Reverend talked about trauma, and everyone I know is really, really, really scared about the direction that this country is going in. So I'm wide open to hearing anything any of you would like to say.
Wow. Okay. I think there are different types of trauma. Mr. Trump, I don't know what his trauma is, other than someone who's used to getting his own way, and it didn't happen this time. And so maybe in his eyes that makes him a failure, and he can't deal with that. And there are people out there that are like that. There are people called narcissists who think everything should revolve around them. White supremacists, I don't know what that issue is, why it still exists. All I can do for that is be me and give people a chance to be heard no matter where they come from. If a white supremacist wanted to sit down and talk and explain to me their feelings, maybe there's trauma involved that I have no idea about because I never engaged them. But just like I never engaged the people who are incarcerated to find out, you know, what's underneath their trauma, you know, I took the time to listen. So I think I would offer that same olive branch to anyone. It doesn't matter. Maybe there's something underneath that we don't know why white supremacists exist, other than to just, you know, harm people of color. And that's the goal, and that's it. Maybe there's something underneath that we could dissect, and we haven't even tried. You know, just saying, it's, you know, we're all human beings, and maybe there's something there that we don't see. Trauma is invisible. Again, it has no color, so we have no idea what's behind that, unless we go in there and dissect it and ask and really sit down and open it up and say, put it all out there.
Thank you.
That's very powerful.
That was very
Empathetic.
powerful. I think Coral wants to say something, and then I have a follow-up as well. Coral, yeah, I'm mute.
Okay, hello, everybody. Thank you, Robin, Graham, so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And Lane, and welcome, AJ Woodson. I think by the same token, we say that you can't love unless, you know, when you were talking earlier about what love is, and that some people seem not to have it and have lost it. And I think by the same token, if you have not known love, if you have not received it, you cannot give it.
Right.
So when I think about people, when I think about Donald Trump, and when I think about white supremacists, what comes to mind is no matter how much they have this, somewhere there's an underlying feeling of inadequacy. And with it, this feeling of inadequacy, of course, trauma is a part of that. So I'm not saying to do X or do Y or do Z, but I think I would start with some understanding that inadequacy and some feeling of self-worthlessness is underlying it, and then go from there. And what you said, Robin, about giving them that opportunity to express themselves and to hear them out. So that would be my guiding thought, which I don't necessarily have to say, you know, I wouldn't say that to them, but that's sort of how I would start.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cora. Let me say that it's almost time for us to give our closing thoughts. Karen, I want to thank you for that question, because, you know, being thoughtful about how to engage people and to help them and ourselves navigate these choppy waters is really so important. Rather than just throw our hands up and say, I don't know how to handle this, right? To actually kind of be quiet and inquire, how do we manage this? And I do want to remind folks that fear is traumatizing. Polarization is traumatizing. Dehumanization is traumatizing. Otherism is traumatizing. Not being able to meet your bills is traumatizing. Being poor is traumatizing. Being homeless is traumatizing. Gun violence is traumatizing. But being lied to in schools, and somehow you know that you're being lied to, but you can't figure it out, is traumatizing. Not being able to get to a higher education is traumatizing. Not being able to get a job is traumatizing. Right? This country, the layers of trauma, right, that people have had to live through exists in our cellular structure, so that people, right, who are taking one position or another. And that includes white supremacists, that includes narcissists, that includes, you know, people who just occur as not able to communicate or doing whatever it is that would traumatize other people, have been traumatized. And we may never understand what that level of trauma is or the source of that. And we may not be able to help them, but as Leah was talking about earlier, the lenses that we wear in our life through which we view other people, through which we view ourselves and circumstances, right? To notice, right? It's like, oh, I can see the pain in white supremacists. I can see the pain in Donald Trump. I can see the pain in the senators that are being obstructionists. I can see that pain. Now, does that mean that I'm going to just, you know, say it's okay for them to wreak havoc? No, I don't approve. And it keeps me from being so activated by it that I am then taken away by it, right? So one of the things that Race Talk Revolution is going to be doing is launching an accountability group called Race Talk in Action, whereby people who want to take these wonderful, courageous conversations that we're engaging in and kind of see how you can become a little more active, put things into action. We're going to help you do that. And so that's one of the first things to do, is to notice what are the lenses that we're wearing? What is our listening? And how can we create this loving place where we are taking care of ourselves and each other? And I'm just so grateful today. Robin Graham of Spotlight on Recovery magazine, thank you so much for this conversation today. Clearly, you have touched some lives today. Again, spotlightonrecovery.com. Oh, and I can vouch, I've seen this magazine. It is a lovely publication. It is absolutely wonderful. And this is available online and in print, Robin. I don't know that we made that clear.
Okay, right now it's in print. As the website is developed, it will be digital, but I can send digital copies to individuals who request, so that you can see the platform and make a decision on subscribing, advertising, whatever. Please just email me and I will send you out my current issue, Lies I've Been Taught.
And you told me something about us being able to sponsor issues being sent to people who are incarcerated. Did I hear you that right?
Yes, you did. If you have a loved one that's incarcerated, I can offer them 3 issues of the magazine, and I would email you a digital copy. That way you're seeing what they're getting. So it would start with this month's issue, and then it's bi-monthly. So the next issue they would get is August, and then October. And then if you want to subscribe for them after that, you can.
Okay, so if we go to rgraham_100 at msn.com.
Right, you send me the person's name, the facility. Don't forget to include their DOC number, and I will send it out. And you could even send me a message that you might want to send along with it, because it would be a gift from you. And I will send it to them. Any state you wanted to send it. Yeah, any state.
Thank you, Robin. God bless you for doing this work.
Thank you
so much.
Lane.
This
Thank you,
labor of love.
AJ. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. Thank you so much.
I also want to thank AJ. Thank you so much for being my co-host today. You can find out more about Black Westchester Magazine, People Before Politics Radio, and AJ's new book, Black Westchester, The Origin Story, by going to blackwestchester.com. And also he is on Facebook and Twitter at Mr. AJ Woodson. Did I get that right?
Yep, MR.AJ Woodson. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes. I want to thank you. It's an honor to be here and co-host with you and to open up your platform to me. You know, being a guest on your show is one thing, but sitting here co-hosting, I see you in a different light, and I have to applaud you for what you do. This is definitely a great platform, and I'm glad that I'm able to be Robin to your Batman, and just kind of get
Wait
in
a
where I
minute,
fit
I'm
in.
Robin.
Oh, okay, you're Robin. Okay, yes. Be your sidekick for the day. Like she said, the new book is coming out now. It's Black Westchester: The Origin Story, and how my faith was instrumental in this great experiment. And it tells the story of how we started and everything that led up to it and a lot of stuff that we did. And I think it's a good read, and it should be. I think it's inspirational. And I think there's a link. She put the link up. You can pre-order. You can order it from Amazon, or you can get it from me, and it will be autographed if you get it from me. So if you get it from me, it will be autographed and mailed to you. Amazon is just going to be mailed to you. So
Right.
either way works.
All right, thank you. Folks, thanks so much for coming back. I really appreciate this. We love these conversations, and you are an essential part of our mission to push back against systemic racism. Please join us again next Wednesday for another loving, inclusive conversation about race in America. My co-host next week will be Catholic social ethicist, activist, and award-winning author, Mr. Alex McCulloch. As always, we remind you to connect to people who don't look or live like you and have a meaningful dialogue about race, or maybe even just to have fun. Who knows? Remember, we're all in this together, and all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. I don't know where that came from, but hey, I just said it. If you're on the mailing list, be sure to check out the resources that I send out. Please, there are lots of opportunities happening for your education. There are lots of anti-racist activism workshops coming up. We want you to please check those out. Anything that you can do to contribute to a world that works for everyone, and we are your partners. Race Talk in Action is not launched yet. If you are not on the mailing list, you can email me at info@racetalkrevolution.com, and I will add you to that mailing list, okay? If you like our programs and you'd like to support us, you can make a tax-deductible donation by going to our website at racetalkrevolution.com. And if you have topics or speakers that you'd like us to feature, please do contact us, let us know. Again, info@racetalkrevolution.com, because here on Race Talk Revolution, your voice matters. AJ, shut it down for us.
With that, I just y'all could be doing anything else, but you decide to ride with us, and we greatly appreciate it. This has been Race Talk Revolution, and I'm AJ Woodson, and honored to join Lane Cobb for the day.
Thank you, AJ. Thank you, Robin Graham, Spotlight on Recovery Magazine. We'll see you all next week. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.